How's it going, everybody? It's Brendan from 1IQ Sports Talk here on YouTube, and today I am going to be going over a Chicago Bears 7-round mock draft. As we are getting closer and closer to draft season, we might as well start to do some individual 7-round mocks, starting with my team. I will next be doing the Steelers, and then after that doing the Seahawks. But then after that, if you like this sort of content, please suggest other teams that you would like me to do a 7-round mock for. But to get things started, let's enter this mock. So, few things that I want to talk about at the start of each video for these sort of things. I will be talking about the things and situations that I think this team is going to go into. And for the Chicago Bears, obviously they've had a fairly successful offseason so far, basically engineering that entire interior of that offensive line, trading for Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, signing Drew Dahlman, the center from Atlanta, really making that offensive line really, really strong. I still think Braxton Jones is kind of a question mark as the left tackle for the Chicago Bears, and ultimately if they can find a way to get an upgrade at that position, then ultimately that would probably be a really good situation. I still think the edge rusher room needs a lot more help. I think the D tackle room could also use a little bit of bolstering. Other than that, and running back, I should say, other than running back as well, this team doesn't have a whole lot of holes to fill, but one thing they do need is they do need depth, and they should start to potentially think for the future as well, because yes, they did trade for Joe Thuney, but he is 32, I believe. He's not going to be playing for a long time, and he is only on that 1-year deal. So if the Bears can ultimately find a way to draft a guy for the future, that would ultimately be a really big situation for the Bears. But obviously, we still need to see how this draft ultimately goes. Again, the Chicago Bears currently at this point have pick 10, 39, 41, 72, 148, 233, and 240. Again, the main picks that are going to be really talked about here is 10, 39, 41, and 72. If the Chicago Bears can nail these 4 picks and get some impactful players, they ultimately are going to walk away very, very happy from this draft. Again, as you can see here, we have potential trade offers. We will be looking at those depending on the situation. I'm basically going to be putting myself in the shoes of the Chicago Bears, and if I was the general manager, this is essentially what I would be doing. But nonetheless, let's get into this. Cam Ward, let's see how this goes. Of course, 2 top tackles ultimately fall off the board. Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Will Johnson, Shedeur Sanders, Calvin Banks, I should say, before we get a look at this, and Mason Graham. This was another guy that if Mason Graham ended up falling to us here at pick number 10, I ultimately would have considered it. So now that we are officially on the board, we need to have a discussion of the players that are still out there. Ashton Jeanty is a very, very mocked player to the Bears. So is Tyler Warren. I am personally a massive fan of Mykel Williams to the Chicago Bears. Malachi Starks is also another great option. Again, a little bit of a shock here that we had 3 tackles all go in the top 9. So ultimately that kind of hurts us a little bit. So players that I am necessarily looking for is the running back, tight end, and the edge rusher in Mykel Williams. Malachi Starks is also another good option. Another player that I would also be fairly interested in the Bears potentially taking, maybe not at number 10, is Tyler Booker. Obviously, because if he comes to the team, he isn't going to start in year number 1. He would basically be getting a PhD behind Joe Thuney, which would be a masterclass for the Chicago Bears to do. And we'll potentially talk about that a little bit down the line. But let's also take a look here at some of the trades. Just immediately, the Green Bay Packers is a no. They are not a team that we are potentially going to trade with. It's something, again, me as a Chicago Bears fan, I'm not going to do anything that allows the Green Bay Packers to potentially get better. Denver Broncos here are looking for pick 20, 51, and a second rounder in next year, while we only give up the 10th pick. This would give us a handful of really talented players in the second round, getting those 3 picks instead of the 2, and essentially having 4 top, again, this would put us into a situation of where it'd be 4 top 51, but Ashton Genty here would be a really, really solid pick. If one of the 2 linemen was here, it would instantly be, for instance, these are the 2 linemen that I'm talking about, Armin Mumbu and Will Campbell. If either of these 2 guys were up there, still on the board, I would take them pretty quickly. It wouldn't really be much of a decision. Ashton Genty is just such a good player, but also looking at Tyler Warren. Again, you need to look at the needs for the Chicago Bears, and ultimately, is it a position of premium? Again, for me right now, I would say if I had to choose anyone, it might be Mykel Williams, just because I think maybe not this season, but maybe a little bit more down the line when he has a little bit more of that development time, he could be a fairly decent edge rusher for the Bears. But I'm not going to complicate things here. Again, the offensive tackles have ultimately come off the board, so it has to be Ashton Genty here. Ashton Genty completely comes in and revolutionizes that Bears offense and that running game. Again, the interior of the offensive line has got a lot better. I think Darnell Wright is a phenomenal right tackle in the NFL. I actually think Braxton Jones is a fairly serviceable left tackle. Obviously, if you can get an improvement for him, you would. But with that offensive line, getting Genty with the Bears, with Ben Johnson as the head coach, it just allows him to do so much for this team. Obviously, let's see where the rest of the players go at this point. Tyler Booker goes to the Dolphins. Again, we wouldn't have been able to get any of the guys that we necessarily had on the board at pick 20, where the Broncos ultimately wanted to trade back. So next couple of things that I'm going to be looking for here is obviously still trying to improve that offensive line. Donovan Jackson falling or going 32 overall, that's something I would have loved to have seen. Again, we could potentially move back here because the Lions are looking at this, but let's take a look at some of the players still on the board here at this time. I like Xavier Watts. I really like the idea of Mike Green at this point. Ariante Arasari, I butchered the hell out of probably both of his names there, but so Green, Ariante, tackle from Minnesota. Mason Taylor would be another massive get. Xavier Watts, just taking a look here at some of the other players. These 2 guys, Jonah and Wyatt, are both really, really solid options at that guard spot to be the potential replacement for Joe Thuney after a season. But right here, we need to kind of look at things, and I think it needs to be the trenches. If Mike Green is still on the board at this point, he is just so productive. He does have some of the issues off the field where he has 2 separate allegations against him in terms of SA. If you don't know what SA is, look that up. But yeah, so Mike Green has a little bit of a shaky off the field past, but ultimately he's not been charged with anything. I think if the Bears can get Mike Green at pick 39, they would be laughing all the way to the bank, because I think Mike Green could be a superstar edge rusher in the league. And again, getting him in round 2 to be in a rotation of Montez Sweat, Deo Dangbo, Austin Booker, and himself, that gives the Bears a lot of reason to really like that defensive line. So we are going to select Mike Green, the edge rusher, out Marshall. So one of the guards that we wanted potentially off the board, I really, really like Wyatt. Again, during his time in college, he has just been such an amazing player. Again, he was a tackle, didn't give up any sacks, I believe, over the last 3 years of college as a tackle. He is just a very, very talented player. I think the Bears getting him in round 2 at this spot would be really, really ideal. Again, I think getting a guy, again, he played tackle at West Virginia, but he's projected to play guard. Him learning behind Joe Thuney would be amazing. And again, he has that left tackle experience at West Virginia. So, for instance, if Braxton Jones goes down or is just playing absolutely horrific, well, guess what? You can slide him in there. You have player versatility with Wyatt. That is why I am going to take him here. Again, we need the Bears to not only just think about the depth that they have here at the moment, or the starters that they need to fill here at the moment, but also the depth for the future, because just planning for the now is fine, but you also need to plan for the future, and Wyatt is going to be a phenomenal player in this league. And again, one of the biggest things that we've ultimately had here, again, after that Ashton Genty, this is a luxury pick, I should say. Taking that, we then need to address basically the rest of this team's needs after that point, because again, when you take that really, really high-end sexy pick of Ashton Genty, you need to make sure that you are getting really good players after that point. Just continuing to watch here, seeing some players trickle by. Jared Wilson going in the second, that would be a little bit of a shock for me, as I think most people view him kind of as like a third round type of guy. So taking a look at the trade offer, we can end up trading back a few spots with the 49ers and getting a 5th rounder in next year. Again, the Chicago Bears don't have a 4th rounder in next year's class, so we're kind of just essentially moving back a pick there. This would be fairly interesting, not getting, or we're not getting this, but we get the 78th pick and the 115th pick. I think I will reject the 49ers, so we'd be moving back a few more spots here, but ultimately, what are some of the things that we can potentially look at here? But taking a look, Isaiah Bond, we know he is a speedy wideout who does have the ability to catch, and that would work fairly well in a Ben Johnson style offense. But then again, they did sign a very speedy receiver in, I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head, but again, he played in Baltimore for a lot of years, and it would be a fairly nice thing. Darius Alexander and Alfred Collins both add to that D line and give it that little bit more of a rotation. Again, the Bears D line or defensive tackle room here at the moment is Grady Jarrett. Then you have Andrew Billings, Trevon Dexter, and those are really your only 3 guys. And you can have a really, really solid room there, but adding just another defensive tackle would make that room so much better. Kevin Winston Jr. is a phenomenal player from Penn State, and honestly, with the health concerns of Jaquan Brisker, trying to get him to come in might actually be a really, really solid option. Chris Paul, the linebacker, I think is phenomenal. I think that would be a really nice get. Jack Beck would also be a really fun player to see come to the Bears. He just has unbelievable hands. I think he had like a 1.5% drop rate in college, so he is just absolutely phenomenal. But yeah, this gets us an additional pick, because from this point on, moving back, we have to wait quite a while. So I think I am actually going to take this Cardinals pick right there. They do take Collins, and Alexander goes to the 49ers. So we lose those 2 defensive tackles. This is kind of making our decision just a little bit easier coming to this point. The Jets, oh my God, offering an absolute haul. The pick 110, 145, 162. I don't know if I'm willing to take that Minnesota pick or trade I wasn't interested in. I think the Bears in this scenario, I would probably say would rather end up staying here and picking. Cameron Williams would be a nice little get here at this particular point, but ultimately, I think we need to kind of look at this Bears offense and really just try to build that out a little bit more. I think Isaiah Bond would be a really fun player, but the big thing there is the RAS score. If you know anything about Ryan Poles, and again, I know I'm not saying I'm going into the mind of Ryan Poles here, this is what I would do. But yeah, I think getting a guy like Kevin Winston Jr. would just be an absolute very smart move here, because again, you have both of your starting safeties are on the final year of their deal. One is 33 and the other has major injury concerns. If you can get a young safety that comes in there and plays a really, really solid rotation, that's a phenomenal pick for the Bears. And again, Isaiah Bond ended up moving backwards the right after us, so no worries whatsoever as we continue on with the draft here, as that continues to go down. But yeah, adding a lot of key pieces here, just really trying to add to this unit. Again, Terrence Ferguson, I would love to end up getting. He just didn't kind of fall to us at that point. Still trying to move this one down, trying to find just a little bit more. Almost at our pick here. And now taking a look at what we have. I know Kobe Bryant from Kansas is a player that the Bears have indeed talked to again here in this 4th round pick. This is a situation for us where hopefully we can find a still pretty decent player. Top 120, Anthony Belton is a fairly solid tackle. Again, with the Bears drafting Kareem Amagaje last year, I don't think they're going to be looking for kind of like another project type guy. I know they're still really hopeful with Amagaje that he can kind of step up and be a really, really solid player there, but still just kind of taking a look here at some of the players. Again, at this point with some of the tackles, you're not getting a day one starter. You're still going to have to get a pretty decent player, but CJ West is kind of piquing my interest. Again, we talked about the defensive tackles a little bit early, so I am going to go with CJ West, the defensive tackle out of Indiana. Again, just adding a little bit more to that defensive rotation in that D tackle room. And again, the best part is with CJ West, he doesn't have to be a main contributor day one, because again, he's essentially going to be guy number 4 on that unit. Another guy that I would potentially like here at 148 is a guy like Pat Bryant. Again, I think he's been a phenomenal player, and if he ends up still being there, we could potentially consider that, but we will have to see. Ends up going to the Ravens on that particular occasion. Still seeing exactly what's going to come our way. So now this is a little bit of an interesting one. Move back a few spots here with the Bengals of 153. We're at 148 and also getting 229. So that could be a decent little haul for us to move back. Jake Bramingstool is a guy that I think the Bears could be fairly interested in. At 6'5", 240 pounds, is a mismatch for linebackers. Again, we do know the Bears are interested in trying to bring in a second tight end to play with Cole Kmet. Jeffrey Bassa was someone that I would be very interested to see. But again, I think this Bengals trade package, just getting some of those a little bit later rounds, a little bit interesting there. And let's see if either of those two guys ends up going. Bassa ends up right there. And I think Jake Bramingstool, again, we don't even have a trade offer here at the moment. I think this is just the easy pick here in the 5th round, getting that tight end number 2 on this team to play behind Cole Kmet and allow Ben Johnson to have kind of those 2 tight end sets. And again, our next pick doesn't come until 229, so we have a fair whack of time before our next pick. Again, Buffalo Bills here have just a handful of picks that they received. Nick Nash, that would be a good pick for Seattle. But now going into the 6th round, again, just taking a look at this, we'll kind of break it down right at the end of this. So finally, after kind of sitting here for a while, we are officially now back up on the board. And again, a few interesting players here. Jacob Giddens. Again, we did bring in a new center this offseason in Drew Dahlman, but this could be an interesting situation to get a young player in there to kind of get a little bit of learning experience in this room. Again, Antoine Wells Jr., I think, is a very fun player that the Bears could potentially go after. Just trying to take a look here. Again, at this point in the draft, you're not really getting anything too high or too stellar. Crenshaw Dixon has had a lot of experience time at the college level. He's a big boy, could potentially be something a little bit farther down the line, but I think there is another tackle in this class that the Bears ultimately have kind of looked at and talked about. I think at this point, going with Jacob, the center from Western Michigan, might not necessarily be a bad move, just adding some more depth to this O-line. Again, we've already dealt with a bunch of the needs earlier on in this process. Again, having just 2 more picks here at this point. I know a player that the Bears are very, very interested in. I wonder if I ended up scrolling past him. He isn't actually an offensive tackle. It's Caleb Rogers. This is a guy that has is a 5-year starter, over 400,000 snaps in college. Again, Bears have talked to this guy a fair amount. So honestly, again, with the information that I know, I think this could be a situation where you do need another tackle on this team, and just adding that little bit of depth there at that point is also another good point. And with this final pick here, as you can see, we are on the wide receivers. And my thing here is Arian Smith. He is fast, fast, fast. He has a ridiculous high drop rate. For me at this point, I could see it be him. I could see it be Wells. We know Ben Johnson loves speed. I could see this guy being a high-end type of undrafted free agent type pickup. But I think the Bears here, with this extra 7th round pick, you might as well try to throw a flyer out on him. And I think that's exactly what they are going to do with that pick. Or at least what I would do with that pick at that time, knowing what the head coach likes. And that brings us to the final bit of this draft. Again, we made, I think it was 2 trades in total, but again, getting Ashton Jeanty, the biggest luxury pick. Again, there's probably only maybe 4 blue chip prospects in this class, and I know I was looking at Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft a little bit, or top 50 prospects earlier. He has Ashton Jeanty as his 3rd best player, and if you can get the 3rd best player in this class at pick number 10, you are going to be a very, very happy team. And then having Mike Green fall to you at pick number 39, this would be absolutely phenomenal situation for the Chicago Bears to have. This guy is a top 15 player in this class. Again, the off-field issues, you have to wonder if those are going to be something that pushes him back, and that would be the reason why I would see him fall. But he is just such an electric player. Wyatt, the guard from West Virginia, he gives us versatility at both tackle and at guard, basically saying if Braxton Jones isn't fully healthy come training camp, you could slide him out to tackle, and if Braxton Jones is healthy but plays bad, then you can do the exact same thing there. But if you have him sitting behind Thuney for an entire season, well, guess what? He gets a PhD in how to play offensive line in this system, which is something that I really like. Kevin Winston Jr. is just going to be someone who is going to be very capable of going in and filling a role whenever needed and playing a really good rotation if need be. And if Jaquan Brisker or Kevin Byard both go down at any single point, I think Kevin Winston Jr. comes in and fills that hole nicely. CJ West is in a nice rotation. Jake Brimmingstill is, again, that number 2 tight end that allows Ben Johnson to play with that 12 personnel a lot more. And pretty much just everyone else there in the 7th round is just a handful of really, really nice depth. I think the Bears ultimately, if this was their draft class, I would be pretty happy with ultimately how it played out. Yeah, sure, we ended up trading a few spots back and ended up losing out on some players that we liked, but I still think ultimately getting this class would mean the Bears are a much, much better team moving forward. But that's it for this video. Thank you all very much for watching. For Brendan, or I'm Brendan saying peace.